on the go. People are increasingly, running remote practices. Very low bandwidth that's required, so you can use a hotspot if necessary, but the tool is web-based. And you're going to see here sets. We've got this library, and sets is what we want to try and orient around. You can draft a single form or template if you want, as needed, but we really want to think about the things that you're doing a lot of. And actually, give me a second. I'm going to turn off my camera so people can actually see this. I want to make sure everyone has a full view. And assembling those so that you can create this very predictable workflow. Now, going into the court forms. So these are the PDF court forms, and we've got libraries in all 50 states. I don't have them all listed here. We also have the federal USCIS forms. But the practice, essentially, and why I say this is turnkey, is you just come in here, and we also have county forms as well. But I say California forms. Let's say I'm looking for, FL 100. You can either search by form name or form number. So I've got FL 100 with children. I can preview the form if I want. If this is what I want, then I just click add. I also have the option to create a customized form template where I can pre-check boxes. I'm going to come back to that. There's a lot of information that is going to be tied to a matter. That's the first kind of underpinning in terms of how information is saved. For people who've used document automation tools previously, an answer file is commonly what's referred to, but we think the matters are a little bit more flexible. But I can come in and add whatever forms that I need. I can just draft ad hoc, but this is how you save as a set. You just give it a name and it pops into the set section. I'm going to draft one of these sets that I put together, and it includes one of those form templates I'm talking about. It has an edited FL 100 that has some pre-checked boxes in it and some form language utilize. And for people who don't use PDF court forms, I'm going to get through this quickly and we'll get to the Microsoft Word templating component of this. But same workflow for whatever you're doing. I'm going to say draft new document set. And I'll say this is for the Vandelay matter. And whenever you're drafting a form, you're either going to be tying to an existing matter or you're going to be creating a new matter. I'm going to create a new matter, example matter, just so you can see what the workflow looks like. Create, and I'm going to tie it to example matter. I click next, and the next screen we go to is what's called the journey, and it's this guided workflow where you can see, all of the different fields that are repeated across multiple forms or that have been tagged. And you can just go through the first time. You can save contacts into our system. So if you've got multiple attorneys, you can save the attorneys as contacts. You can save opposing counsel, judges, courthouses, what have you. But I'm actually going to go back and show you the benefit of saving to a matter. So let's say that I've done one of these matters before. I know that I have a Vandelay matter for divorce of Art Vandelay. Now, if you're not a Clio user, this won't pop up, but for Clio users, it will automatically sync all of your matters. It's easy to update. If there's been a change made, you can launch Clio from directly in here. But then I just click next. And we're going to see that everything's already been filled out because it remembers from that matter all of this information. And what you're seeing on the left here, those are just categories of information. We call them cards. And they're different types. Some are roll cards where you can pull in any contact that you would like. You can see how many times the information is repeated across the forms that we're going to be generating. And you can see that other party, let's get rid of that. But if I don't have, if there isn't another party or there's information missing, I don't get the check mark. So this is your little guide. If I were to put something in here, I get the check mark. You don't have to have everything checked off. You may not have as much, or you may not have all the information. You don't need it necessarily to generate the documents, though. You can save courts, for example. So if I was in another court, I could pull in that court and all of their information would pop in automatically. But you go through, and if this all looks good, I just click Generate Documents. And for the PDFs themselves, you see that everything just goes where it's supposed to go. Now you can see this is my edited FL100 for instances where this is with children. And I know that this is a dissolution, it's the marriage, we are married. You know, I've pre-checked a couple of boxes, and I know that I always, insert this language. Again, we have this across 50 states. So if you are using PDF court forms and they're structured like this, is probably going to be a great fit, particularly in certain practice areas, family law, state administration, landlord tenant, and just general civil litigation. We have an e-sign tool, federally compliant, that's built in. But if you want to download these documents, you just go through and make whatever edits that you would like. All of our fields will auto shrink as necessary, but if you need more space, and that's a common issue with the forms posted on state websites or with other platforms, you can just add in a custom field and you can make this as big or small as you'd like. And very often people will use this. We learn from our users. People use them in interesting ways. Someone showed us a long time ago, because this is transparent, if I want to cross something out, I can do that without getting the whiteout out, which you should not be doing, by the way. But there are a lot of handy ways that you can utilize the tools that we have in here. So that's the court forms, and I'm going to transition now to the Microsoft Word templates. And I think this is a good example. We'll get into, again, a couple of different use cases, but I really like this set because it very clearly kind of lays out just some core functionality. And you look at this, and all the areas that are highlighted are areas that I set up fields in. So imagine taking this document and using our add-in, dropping fields in. So here's the example, say example complaint NJ. I click continue, so it's saving to the system right now. And once it's synced, I'm going to have a couple of options as to whether I want to configure from a older template or whether I want to start fresh. But basically, I created several different templates, and it's actually very easy to use the tool. And if I want to generate this set, same process as with the PDF court forms, Soprano. I'm going to use the Soprano matter here. I click next, and what we're going to notice is there are a couple of different options that we don't have with the PDFs because those are standardized. And if I go back to this template right here, we're going to see, these are pretty standard. We're just talking about different parties, marriage information, what have you. But I've got some conditional logic built in here. So based on how many children I select, I'm going to have the proper language filling in. So if I say 3, then the and's going to come after, child 2. And these are Clio custom matter fields, but they don't have to be Clio custom matter fields. This is just an example. Under this 7 prior case history, I have a couple different options of language I use depending on the case background. But if there's no child, it completely disappears. You also see some conditions I put in so that, if child 2 full name exists, it's going to turn this from child into children. So all of that looks, we'll go through how to set up a template, but, this is what it looks like once it's set up and you're actually drafting. So number of children born in the marriage, I'm going to say 3. Same concept. I can see how many times information is repeated. These are some Clio custom matter fields. Again, don't worry about it if you don't have Clio, you're not required to use it. And here's that multiple choice section. I've programmed in, if no case is pending, no orders entered. And again, you get to decide how this lays out. I typically use this language, and I can come in here and make edits as necessary. Other cases pending, I use this language. If a custody order has been entered, I use this language. And again, you could leave specific instructions if you want. What if it's Exhibit B in this instance? I can just change that. And it's not going to affect the template for the rest of your matters. It's only going to tie to this matter. And then I just click Generate Documents. And as opposed to the PDFs, what we're going to see generated. They're just previews, but people tend to like that compared to some other solutions. I get a preview so I can see, okay, there it is. That's the summons. That looks good. Let's look at the complaint. Okay, that looks good. Looks consistent. I'm not having to do the save as. There's no find and replace all. There are 3 children because I said 3. And comes after date of birth of the second child. Here's that paragraph 7, and it said Exhibit B. And we'll see, it's not highlighted because these are in between conditions that I set up, but that it changed from child to children. And if I said that there were no children, we wouldn't have B and C because those have to do with the children, and we wouldn't have 7 because that has to do with the custody. I can toggle off the highlight changes if I want. We just wanted to give people that option. They'll automatically disappear if you use the e-sign tool. But I like to keep them in, to be perfectly honest. And the next step is I can just download either the current document or everything together as a zip. But a key thing to point out, but this is your output. And you're not going to be doing actual redlining in the platform. That's not what it's designed for. We've explored it, but this is really just for those documents that you're doing on a consistent basis, letting us do the heavy legwork for you on the front end so that you can spend the bulk of your time actually doing the customization, per case. And again, this is just a flat Microsoft Word document that I can do, whatever I would like with. But that's a general overview. Sorry, I'm going to come back here, see if anyone has any specific questions. Claire, well, I guess we'll just get to it in the Q&A section. But let's talk about a couple different use cases, because that was like I showed you 2 family law examples. But, if there are any, business law attorneys in here, commonly you've got like, big packets. It's just the same information over and over again. I can draft a new set. We'll say this is Aurelius. I click next. And again, it's just getting used to, this is going to feel different. One of the common things that we hear, especially from people who have not used a document automation tool before, it feels different than from just going into Microsoft Word and doing that save as from a template. But we want people to kind of start to realize some of the benefits. A lot of people like this contact view because, in certain cases, your client or the founder or what have you, they may also be director 1. They may also be, fill a couple of different roles, and it gives you a lot more flexibility as opposed to just having client 1 all the way through your documents and not being able to account for, different types of instances. It's very common in estate planning as well. Here's that vesting schedule language. This is pretty simple. Do I want a single trigger or a double trigger? Again, you get to decide what this language is. It's fully customizable. And very often people will leave, a custom option if they need to input something that's outside of their normal drafting flow. You can leave hints, so it's really easy to give guidance to new hires or people who haven't really, operated in a certain practice area, or even for yourself, to be perfectly honest. I click generate documents, and we're, going to have that same type of flow. This is a pretty big packet, actually, so this might take a little bit longer to generate. But again, going back to, what people were talking about in terms of that, main concern with respect to document automation, there's this fear of implementation. Hopefully, the documents that I'm showing, they don't look, too overpowering. I'll get into how to set up one of these templates shortly. But we also have a team that can set these up for you. I think we want people to know how to use the tool and not feel, entirely dependent on us. But if you're short on time, especially if you're a solo, there are increasingly people who are using, our team of attorneys and paralegals who do this all day, every day to set up your templates in the manner that you would like. So let's think about some other ways that law firms use us. And, a lot of people will go to the stuff that they hate the most. Discovery is very common, but, you know, we really want to think about what are we doing the most of, because that is typically what's most disruptive to our day. So, one thing people will do is they'll create, an intake form where they can actually, be on the phone with someone and fill out this information, have a printout that they can send over to their client afterwards, just asking them to confirm. But once you have all this information, I can just go into my estate planning packet. So let's see where that is. So if I've collected all of that information already, I've got my estate plan, power of attorney with revocable trust. Let's say that I don't want all of these. Maybe they don't want the trust. I can just get rid of that if I want. So this is Vandalay. I tied to 74, but I think this is a good example also of using the roll cards, because we're going to see here that, child one may also be a backup executor, may also be, a special gift beneficiary. We see this in the Clio matters themselves. The multiple choice, they can be used for just simple things like pronoun changes, but they can also be used for, as we've seen, kind of more complex use cases. I think we probably have a lot of estate planners in the building. And same concept here. We're just going to get a readout of what the documents are going to look like. And again, we can include, letterhead or a custom logo. It's any Microsoft Word document can be turned into a fillable template. Going back to the, the intakes, let's say that we do the intake. I need to get out a new client package, fee agreements and the letter of representation and the new client homework. I've got some conditions in here depending on whether there's a second client, and that just kind of does everything for me. But it was surprising how much time that I spent on just simple stuff like this. So this is the Vandalay new client package. And we're going to see, a lot of information already popped in because it's tied to some information that I've already included. But hopefully this is the workflow that you would start to adopt, particularly if you put together just an internal checklist or an intake type sheet like I was showing. But definitely whenever it's good to take stock of the stuff that you're doing the most. And going back to the, if we're looking at yes, there was fear of implementation, but the general awareness component is huge, especially if you're not doing the drafting yourself. Talk to your team. A lot of people, they may not speak up or may have some fear of speaking up about this because they don't want to act like they're, seem like they're complaining, but there's probably a lot of inefficiencies that are going on that could potentially be resolved. That doesn't mean that, every practice has to use a document automation solution. You really have to find what works for you, and there are a lot of different varieties of them. But going back to that fear of implementation, that first time that you put a template together, now I've done a lot of this, but just showing you what it looks like. Those things on the left-hand side here that we were seeing, I'm creating that workflow by creating these cards. And we have these roll cards, and those are the ones that allow me to use a pull down. Pardon me, let me get rid of that. Those are the ones that allow me to use the pull down, and they come with some default fields. And then there are other cards, which are just catch-alls. So I'm going to say card label, let's say plaintiff. Add card. Some default fields, I can add any type of field that I would like. So we have multiple choice, long text, date, a bunch of different formats. But for here, I already have full name. I just highlight the field, and it's also wherever I drop the cursor. I click full name. and it just creates the field for me. If I've got a lot of different instances, I can do, kind of a bulk. This is basically kind of like a replace all, but this is replacing all the different instances. There's only one here. You can see it's going to adopt the formatting. So here it's just title case. Here it's all caps. I do the same for defendant. I do the same for, this various information, but it's pretty intuitive, and we index pretty heavily on the onboarding component of it. But as opposed to some other tools where you're actually kind of typing in the syntax and the code, we wanted to make this just really easy for users. Again, yeah, maybe it will take a little bit of time to get your templates in the place that you want them. We recommend starting with just simple stuff before we get into some of the conditions that you can build, which makes your documents, that much more modular. But you're not doing this for the first time you need to draft this again. You're doing it for that third and fourth and 50th time, because, when you get them in the right place, you'd like to have a flow like this where I just know very predictably I'm going to get the documents that I need in the format that I need. I'm not going to have to worry about spelling errors or consistency or formatting or anything like that. And you're just eliminating a ton of the time that you may normally spend just putting together simple stuff like this. Another good example of how people are using us is, just having specific correspondence. Let's say, you deliver documents, you're a transactional attorney, or this could be used for updates. But, as opposed to just delivering the estate plan itself, kind of structuring an overview document that references the data points that you've already collected. And you can really just automate this based on all of the previous work that you've done if you set it up correctly. Let's say Vandelay overview letter. I'm going to tie to that matter again. And this is all using inputs that were previously entered from, either the fee agreement or the actual estate plan itself. And with the estate plan, I'm giving my client, what looks like a really tailored, thoughtful, overview of what I'm delivering, because, yes, I want to be thorough in my representation. I want to make sure that they know that, any additional edits, alterations will incur that additional charge. So I want to be very, very clear there. But I don't want them calling up with simple questions about, what's in the estate plan. I want to lay that out for them. And, it's up to you to find the documents that you're doing on a consistent basis and actually turning them into templates that you can use over and over and over again. So I have not, let's see, let me check back with the questions. Can you use Clio to create a form with custom fields that will populate in the Lawyaw forms? And are you able to send it through Clio to keep the information secure? Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to transition over to Clio real quick just to show a couple of use cases with the Clio integration. So again, I want to be clear, you do not have to be a Clio user if you want to use Lawyaw. We're designed as a standalone tool. But if you are a Clio user, so let's show that Vandelay matter again. Let's say the divorce of Art Vandelay. What you can do now is if you go to documents in a matter and you click drafting documents from Lawyaw, and we're going to see for the court forms themselves, we can't pull in custom matter fields to court forms. It's not a big deal. We're working on it, but because those are standardized and there aren't standardized custom matter fields in Clio, we can't pull that information in, but we can pull related contacts in and custom contact fields. But actually, to the question that someone was asking about Clio custom matter fields, we can do that in the Microsoft Word templating tool. So you see I have some custom matter fields here. But again, related contacts, we really like the use of related contacts because if they are labeled consistently, the information will automatically import into Lawyaw. Once it's in Lawyaw, whether it's been pulled from Clio or entered manually and tied to a matter, it's in there. So you don't have to worry about, things moving around here. You can update, but we have our own data backend. But if I were to say documents and I say new, and I say draft new documents from Lawyaw, it's going to open up Lawyaw, and it's going to know what matter I'm in. So let's say I want to do this divorce again, this divorce packet. I say document set. Now we can see that it automatically tied to the 80 Soprano divorce of Carmela Soprano. I click next. Nothing's going to change in this, again, what we call the journey section of this flow. So I'll say 3, but all this information is consistent. Here are the Clio matters, or the custom matter fields themselves. But like this is a Clio custom contact field, so we can pull in the custom contact fields. When I click generate documents, nothing's going to be different here, but we are going to see that there's going to be a new button that allows us to save directly back to Clio. So if this all looks good, I can say save to Clio. It's going to think for a little bit. This is something that we released, a couple months ago, and it was a huge lift to get it right. And there's going to be, additional updates coming. But what we eventually want to do is start to embed this in tasks, so you can really start to automate the drafting of things from within your existing workflows. And so this just lives in your documents section. And if a paralegal or even yourself, you draft it and you say, okay, it's in here, great. Can someone come and review, or you need to review yourself? You just say edit form set in Lawyaw. It's going to open Lawyaw back up. And it's going to take you directly to that journey section, so you can see if anything's missing. If this all looks good, you go to generate documents. And typically, you're going to need to make some edits to the document itself outside of Lawyaw. And at this point, what you would do is just download either the entire set itself or a specific document that you're looking for, make your additional edits, and then use Clio Drive or something like that to load it back into the matter itself. But I get the feeling that there are going to be a lot of questions. I haven't really been keeping my eyes on everything. And, I'd like to have, around 10 minutes to go over some of the questions. So I'm going to switch back here. I'm going to stop presenting. We'll go back to the actual presentation. Give me a second. Okay, so now we're at the walkthrough. Before I forget, there is a lot of buzz around this solo and small firm virtual summit that Clio is putting on Tuesday, April 18th. Please let us know, visit the Clio website, or let us know if you're interested, and it'll be easy to register for, but I think there's going to be a lineup of great speakers and a lot of great content. But let's get into the Q&A.